Pagan Pathways Temple, an amazing place for friends to gather and discuss their mutual interests in paganism and the occult. Rich history, beautiful murals by Johnny Chaos, paintings by many talented members on the walls, a fantastic library, and a fellowship space with not one, not two, but 3 whole couches. Someplace to hang your coat. 1 singular, gender-neutral bathroom with no stalls. 1 Pagans in Need pantry. More than 3 holes in the roof. A kitchen area that leaves much to be desired. We can change this and make it better with your help. Together, we can raise $20,000 to get Pagan Pathways Temple the kind of building it will best accommodate its growing membership. Are you sick of it raining on the inside of the temple? Aren't we all? Let's fix it together. This PPT Presents broadcast is brought to you by TechWitch Detroit. TechWitch Detroit for all your IT needs. Please visit us on the web at techwitchdetroit.com. TechWitch Detroit, we can help. All of the opinions expressed on this show are those of the hosts or guests and do not necessarily express the views of Pagan Pathways Temple or its affiliates. Welcome to PPT Presents, Episode 22. Thank you for listening. Today on PPT Presents we have, first, I sat down with a chat with the lovely Liz Williams. Liz is a fantasy fiction author who recently released a nonfiction book called Miracles of Our Own Making, which is a historical overview of magic in the British Isles. Next we have It Makes You Think with Cynthia Day and Fur. They will be talking about celebrating Beltane while sheltered in place. After that, we have the triumphant return of Ask a Wizard. Magnus sent along his apologies. He had to rebuild the studio after the last segment he recorded. Let's hope this one ends a little bit better for him. Please join us on our Facebook community group as we celebrate gratitude in May. We can be found at facebook.com/groups/Pagan Pathways Temple. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you all real soon. Today, I'll be having a short chat with Liz Williams. Liz is a practicing pagan author who recently authored her first nonfiction book. Her book, Miracles of Our Own Making, is available as an ebook on Amazon, with the hardcover being available on August 1st. Her other titles are currently available on Amazon. A link will be available in the description. So you're a well-known fiction author. This is your first non-fiction efforts, however. Is that correct?
It is. It is my first non-fiction book, yes. We did a couple of books called Diary of a Witchcraft Shop 1 and 2, which was about we being myself and my partner, our own personal experiences. So that was kind of autobiographical. I wouldn't really call it non-fiction. So this is my first proper non-fiction book, yes.
Awesome. And you were nominated for 2 Philip Dick Awards? Is that true?
I think, yeah, two or three.
2 or 3.
It might have been 3. It was 2. That was back in the early 2000s when I started writing. So I'm primarily a science fiction and fantasy writer.
Gotcha. Yeah. I tend to follow that as well. It's quite apparent that you've done a great deal of research into the history of the occult, particularly in the UK. Do you have any interest in looking into paganism over here across the pond?
I totally do, yeah. And I mean, the trouble with Miracles was that we had to limit it to Britain. And I couldn't even really cover Ireland because sometimes the situation in Ireland was very different.
Oh, yeah.
And I couldn't really go into... It's just massive. It's such a massive subject. And
Right.
if I had been able to go into other countries, the book would be about the length of this room.
Right.
It's just crazy because... there's a lot of interesting stuff happening in the late 19th century in Paris, for example. A lot of
Right.
the same sort of people, the same demographics certainly, but actually some of the same characters moving to and fro across the pond, like Anna Bonus Kingsford and Mathers himself. Yeah. And I couldn't really go into a lot of that because I just didn't have space. So I had to kind of leave America out. America, it kind of is crying out for a similar book.
Yes.
But has had some brilliant stuff done on it already. Actually, some really great stuff on the history of magic in the States around. But it's a huge topic.
Yeah.
So we had to really limit it, and I had to be really restrained in not going down the rabbit hole of, goddess worship in San Francisco in the 1970s.
Right.
I'd love to have devoted more time to.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be fascinating, but definitely would make for a much longer read. You're right about that.
That's just the trouble. Maybe volume 2.
Volume 2,
but
there you
it was
go.
very interesting. I mean, it did open up a lot of areas that I started feeling I really should know more about this. I don't know enough about it. And that was in relation to a lot of magical practice in the States and other places. Because the Golden Dawn went off, or a branch of it went off to New Zealand.
Oh.
And it only really shut down in the 70s, but I think there is a group still going in a little town in New Zealand. And this is a massive subject in itself. A guy called Tony Fuller has done a lot of research on this, and I hope he publishes it, because he's still got, he's a Kiwi, he's still got some of the papers.
Oh, wow.
So that in itself, is this stuff is just fascinating. It starts popping up, all over the place, and you think, what were they doing out there?
Yeah.
But, they emigrated or migrated. A group of clergymen actually took the Golden Dawn materials out with them to New Zealand and set up a temple.
That's...
because, and you're just like, wow, I don't know anything about this.
Right. That's just fascinating. That's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
There's lots of stuff like that that I didn't know about. I've got something like pretty much a 30-year history in the occult world now. But there's a lot of stuff that I didn't know about, and that came to light when I was researching this book. And we run an occult conference every year in Glastonbury. And some of the stuff people come up with is just extraordinary.
Yeah.
It does make you realise how little you actually are aware of stuff, and how much is out there.
Right. I yes, absolutely. I 100% get it. Now, funny thing, and this kind of ties into what we were just talking about in kind of a weird sort of if you cross your eyes sort of way. Have you spent any time on some of the newer social media platforms, such as like TikTok and things like that? And I've spent some time on there, and it's just kind of alarming what some of these younger pagans and witches believe to be true.
Yes.
Have you spent any time with that? Like,
no, I haven't. But I'm primarily on Facebook, but I have seen some forums. And you just, you cover your eyes, really. It's just a train wreck.
Yeah.
But I have to say, when I was a young pagan back in the day, we believed some total crap as well. Like the whole 9 million witches killed in the witch trials type thing.
Right.
No, that's not true.
No.
But I didn't really question it for a couple of years, and I suddenly started thinking, that is an awful lot of people. Is that actually accurate? And no, of course not.
Right.
It's not.
Yeah.
But there are definitely things, and I did sort of buy into the whole, Easter comes from Eostra, she's an actual Germanic goddess. It seems like she's not. People have been doing the research.
Right.
But I think, I said this on another podcast last week, the essential thing is to change your mind when you come up against new evidence, not cling on to the old beliefs. I've had to throw out so much stuff that I actually believed in.
Right. And
over the years. Because historical evidence changes, people do more research, they come up with stuff that you didn't know about, as we were just talking about.
Yeah.
And rather than kind of clinging blindly onto a belief that because it's cherished and personal to you, you've got to get rid of it.
Right.
And I think that's why I devoted quite a large chunk of the introduction to this, talking about historical method and how to do it, because a lot of people aren't taught that.
Not at all.
Why
no.
would they know?
Right.
Why would they know if they're not taught it?
Right.
It takes a lot of experience before you can start really thinking outside the box. And unless you have the toolkit to start thinking outside the box, and the box to start with,
right.
it's really difficult. So I don't want to slam anybody.
Right.
But I certainly don't want to do that.
Right.
I don't want to play the sort of the wise elder thing. Of course, in my day, we didn't believe all this nonsense. Do fuck up. That's really patronising.
Right.
And a lot of the younger people are really going to bring something interesting in their own right to this particular party. But
Yes.
Yes, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and it's kind of all our job to get to grips with that, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. So I wanted to ask, and this, I don't know even if you know who this person is, but how do you feel about the works of historical fiction such as the writings of Morgan Llewellyn?
Okay, well, I think there's definitely a role for fantasy to take things and mix it up and change it, and that's great. And I have actually read some of her. I think there's a novel, a couple of novels set in Ireland, and I've read one of those, and I thought it was quite a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah.
And the same with Marion Zimmer Bradley, and I know there are problems with Zimmer Bradley. There've been scandals, to put it mildly.
Right.
But I actually really enjoyed Mists of Avalon when it came out, and I got a lot out of it. And it wasn't until later again that I started thinking, is this really a feminist work, actually? Because the women in this spend so much, and okay, the oppression of patriarchy, but they spend so much time stabbing each other in the back and being unpleasant to this other. Is this really feminist? And I kind of had to think, no. But at the same time, it's a very evocative, resonant work, whatever the failings, and they were considerable, of the author.
Yeah.
So I think fantasy does have a big role to play, but what we want to avoid is getting it shelved onto the non-fiction shelf.
Right.
And a friend of mine is a professional medieval Welsh historian and academic, and she came to Glastonbury to visit us a few years ago, and she did actually find a copy of Mists of Avalon in a bookshop under the history section.
No. No.
But instead of kind of having a meltdown, she just took it off the history and stuck it into the fiction section. And said nothing.
Well, that was considerable restraint on her part.
Yeah, considerable restraint. She's a very patient person, and I think that sort of thing we want to avoid. So you've got to draw a difference between artistic license, romantic truth, which is an expression Ronald Hutton uses about some of the origin myths of modern paganism. It's a romantic truth. It's not actual historical, factual truth.
Right.
So, so there's an epistemic difference that we can make with some of ththese things. But, I take myth and I play around with it and I change it. So I can't really criticize other people for doing that.
Exactly. I myself am also a writer. I'm not nearly as accomplished as you are, but I think it just makes for good writing if you're able to kind of like embellish things out a little bit and bring them to an eventual endpoint. But you do have that lovely little. You can stick a little sticker that says "This is fiction" on your book, and people understand
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, as long as it's shelved in the right place and it's in the right category. I've just done a novel. I've got the novel out at the same time as Miracles. It's called Comet Weather, just a brief plug for commercials here.
Oh, yeah.
It's set in Somerset, and it actually uses a lot of Renaissance astrology. There are star spirits called the Bohemian stars, and the Bohemian stars are real pieces of Renaissance star magic, and they are personified. They've each they take humanoid form. And they have different colours, different associations, different crystals, different herbs associated with them. And in the original Renaissance text, some of those spirits are actually male, but I made them all female.
Well, yeah.
So, that's me taking something and kind of appropriating it. I'll totally cop to that.
Right.
But because it fitted the structure and the plot of the book and the theme of the book more. So I should say, in the next novel, there is evidence that these entities are male as well, but I happen to do something else with it.
Right. Yeah.
So, and people do that with the Celtic background of these islands a lot. And sometimes it's irritating, I have to say, and sometimes it seems perfectly justified, actually, because as my medieval historian friend says, if you're actually writing about medieval Wales, there's an awful lot of violence and mud, and there's kind of not a lot else.
Right.
These were basic times. So, although the idea that we had an ancient priestesshood and a matriarchy and all the rest of it is very romantic and fanciful and not actually factual,
Right.
it's still more exciting for the plot of a fiction book.
Yeah, to use a kind
there's
of
some justification there.
yeah, to use a kind of crude phrase that we occasionally, my husband and I will use, is talk about metaphysical dick waving that people do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great phrase.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing is when it starts bleeding into non-fiction and you get things like the infamous Irish potato goddess. No, that sort of stuff. You've got to put a stop to that, because that's really quite dangerous misinformation, actually.
Yeah,
You know, it's taking somebody's history and it's distorting it, and in a place which was subject to significant colonialism from the English and abuse, and it's we don't want to perpetuate that sort of thing.
Not at all.
So,
not in any way.
It's a fine line, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, I was thinking about this and kind of still formulating the question in my head. So forgive me, it might come out a little but
No, that's fine.
so here in the Americas in general, there's been a lot of uptick in the worship of a deity called Santa Muerta. And
Yes.
yeah, and it's really interesting because she's a created deity.
Yes.
She's not in the history anywhere. Do you have any thoughts about that? Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm fine with it, actually. She's worshipped over here to a certain extent, in places like Bolton, which, if you know Bolton, is just the most bizarre thing. It's a small northern industrial town, but there is a section of cult up there. And I know there's people in South Wales who are involved in the worship of Santa Muerte as well. She's a created folk saint, isn't she?
Right, yeah.
She's like St. Expedite, who is one of my favourite folk saints.
Yes.
His origins are just bizarre. You know about his origins.
Yes, I do. You're talking folk magic now. That's where I get down.
With Expedite on it and a Roman statue of a Roman soldier in it.
Yeah.
But I have called upon St. Expedite in terms of great financial necessity, and St. Expedite, by God, has come up with the goods.
yes,
So
absolutely.
who am I to say that just because they're made up doesn't mean they're not real?
Right.
And this is like a big ontological question, because at some point, either you can say, and this, if we knew the answer to this, obviously we would be theological heroes, but
Right.
we're not. At some point, worship of everything has to start everywhere.
Right.
And somewhere. And so, Aphrodite is now an ancient goddess, but she had origins in smaller cults around the Mediterranean. She is sort of syncretic. People took little spirits, and kind of eventually a goddess evolved out of all these different types of entities with different attributes, which is why some of the ancient goddesses and goddesses have such a bizarrely wide range of attributes.
Yes.
Because originally they were all individual spirits.
Yes.
But their worship had to start somewhere. I am not here to say whether there is an entity out there that suddenly decides to come through and contact people, or whether it is the other way around, whether we, through our imaginative capacity, create that entity.
Or out of need. In desperation.
What can't be denied is that they do often seem to work, however you define work.
Right. As long as they're doing the thing that you're asking them to do.
Yeah, within reason. I mean, gods and goddesses usually don't actually. They take you literally. They don't understand human problems very well.
Right.
So it's a very, we all know this. It's terribly fraught. But I think, I think Santa Muerte is a fascinating deity, and she obviously has emerged from wherever in response to a human need.
Yes, yeah.
And her popularity really kind of, reflects that. But voodoo is very much a candomblé or its various forms, all those sorts of folk religions. They're very organic and fast developing.
Yes.
They come out from the ground up, and they're not primitive religions. They're sophisticated religions that are emerging according to sociological dictates and context. So as the context changes, the deities change, and it's quite fast. I mean, the Catholic Church used to be a bit like this, I think, in medieval times. Because I wish I could find it now. I need to look up the reference, but I came across a saint, and this is sort of just about when the Reformation was happening, and she was somewhere in the Midlands. But you could go to her if you wanted your husband stiffed. So you could pray, and she would take out, like a sort of, theological hit woman, she would take out your husband for you. And when the church turned up to kind of shut this shrine down, they found this massive queue.
Oh my.
Going, you won't believe what he did next. And I said, that's what we've got to go. We've got to do something about this. So they've gone to the saint to sort it out. And I just thought, God, that's so unchristian, really.
Right.
But a lot of the early Catholic saints and Christian saints were not. They weren't meek, mild, gentle, compassionate. They were these terrifying sort of forces.
Right.
And I think the voodoo pantheon is much more similar to that.
That makes sense.
And probably much more like the deities of the ancient world than it is like the sort of big four religions today.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. So one more question, and then I think I'm going to cut you loose. Let you get on with your life for a minute. We talk a lot, especially in our pagan community, which is the Metro Detroit area. So you're talking Southeast Lower Michigan.
Okay.
So the one that looks like a mitten in just kind of that lower thumb area. That's where we're at.
Okay, yes. Okay.
Cool. We talk a lot about cultural appropriation here, just because we're a very diverse community, as you might imagine.
Yes.
How is that playing out in the UK right now? How are you guys kind of trying to find your way through that kind of prickery slope that is cultural appropriation versus what is,
yes,
religious?
Yes, it's a big issue, and we are usually sociologically, as a culture, a little bit behind the States. So the States, tends to sort of feed back what it's doing in terms of social contexts and cultural contexts and so on. Cultural appropriation, though, is a big issue, and I think it's a genuine issue.
Yeah.
And I think, again, there's the question, there are lots of questions surrounding it. One of those question dynamics is, again, this, are spirits real?
Right.
Because if they are real, then we may presume that they come to you and approach you. And in the voodoo tradition, there is this thing that everybody has a loa who walks with them,
right,
when they're born.
Yep.
So, so so we all have one, whatever nationality and race we are.
Right.
And I think that's fine if it's coming from that part of the culture. And, black practitioners of voodoo are saying this is actually the case. Mm. Where you run into problems, obviously, is the kind of weekend workshop warrior who does a course on shamanism for like 2 days and then decides that they're an expert. Right. They know more about it than the actual practitioners of that religion or the people who've actually been have grown up with it. We don't know that much. So I've known a couple of voodoo practitioners who are white in this country who don't actually do that. They're not prepared to go the full way and become a Hungan because that's a massive undertaking.
Yes.
And there are issues with cultural appropriation with that.
Yeah.
If you suddenly, especially, it's because the whole thing about cultural appropriation is that there's a power differential, and the black community in this country is not as privileged as the white community. There is a lot of institutionalized and overt racism here. Mm. And if you start taking voodoo and running workshops on it, and you're white and middle class and British, I don't think that's a good look.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah.
I've only organised one voodoo workshop in Glastonbury, and that was with a Hungan who is Puerto Rican, and he came over from New York. We flew him in.
Ah, yes.
But we wouldn't have tried to do it. You find to hold ceremonies. I mean, I believe that the spirits and the entities, the Loa, the gods, whatever, are externally real. I believe they're objectively real, but that's just me.
Right.
So I tend to believe that if you do something they don't like, they will kick your ass.
That's my belief as well. That's always kind of been my thing.
So that's where I am on the whole cultural appropriation thing. I think you have to be sensitive to people's concerns because they are legitimate concerns. And you also can't treat one nationality or ethnicity as a monolithic block. It's not the case that all Nigerians think the same. It is not the case that all Yoruba think the same about their own religion. You're going to have different opinions.
Right. And you can't really go individual by individual.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to treat people as individuals.
Yeah.
So I have, for example, done a little bit of work with one of the Yoruba spirits.
Okay.
And that was because I was asked to by somebody who is Nigerian.
Okay.
You sometimes get that, and I had to say, I'm going to have to rock up on the astral to this entity and say, I have no idea what I'm doing. White girl.
Yep.
And just kind of, and we handled it very, very carefully and delicately. And in the end, my friend said, I think you probably are going to need to step back.
Yeah.
This is how you do it. This is what you do. So I did that. And sure enough, I had been having fairly significant dreams about, which I don't normally have in that particular way, about different sort of correspondences and so on. And after we'd sort of done the separation bit, then that didn't happen anymore.
Right.
But I would only ever I wouldn't do it for experimentation, and I wouldn't do it for fun, certainly. I did it because I was asked.
Right. And most of us do follow this edict of going where we're needed and doing what is needed and things like that. So,
Exactly. Yeah,
exactly.
but I think you've got to be careful. But, the idea that I could sort of set myself up, I spent a while in Siberia. I know Siberian shamans. I know a little bit about the practice, but the idea that I would then go up and set myself up as some kind of Siberian influence shaman is just actually outrageous.
Yes.
I don't know enough. I don't come from that background. So I follow my own particular path, and that tends to be Indigenous British as far as we can.
Right.
There's a lot of it we don't know. And I know where my spiritual tradition actually comes from, and most of that's in the book.
Right.
But I think, again, I don't want to be nationalistic about it and say that if you're Chinese, I have Chinese magical students, if you're Chinese, you can't come over here and start studying Druidry. Right. Why the hell not?
Right.
If they feel that that's appropriate to them, with the cultural appropriation caveat,
right.
Let's see how it goes. Because sometimes I think people do get approached by entities who want to work with them, and they don't always have a big say in the matter.
Right, yeah. Usually it's we're working together now. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is what I'm doing, I guess.
You're like, oh, are we? Okay.
This is where we are now.
Yes.
Yep.
But I think, if you're serious about paganism and you can put your ego aside and you've had experience of getting your ass kicked, which is very helpful.
Yes.
Then I think, you should be okay, but you've got to deal with it sensitively, and you can't treat other people's cultures as just something that you're entitled to.
Right, exactly. All right, well, Liz, this has been absolutely fascinating. I just want to go ahead and I'm going to encourage folks to read your new book, which is about miracles in your own making, a history of paganism. And also check out the non-fiction works too. Liz is awesome, and you should definitely read her stuff.
Thank you.
So, all right, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for asking such interesting questions. It's been a great pleasure.
Well, thank you. It's been so much fun. Thanks so much, and we'll talk.
And
maybe
now
we'll talk
it's
again
time
soon.
for It Makes You
I
Think
hope so.
by
I hope so
Cynthia
much.
Day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Subjects that are sufficiently complicated, enough to give one pause, just enough to make you think. Hi, this is Cynthia Day, and this is It Makes You Think. I'm here with Fur. Say hi, Fur.
Hi, Fur.
And she's a long way off. We're doing this 22nd edition of It Makes You Think via Zoom. And hopefully the audio portion of it will come out all right. I think it does. It looks like it's recording all right. But this particular one will be about Beltane, because we are a week away from May 1st. And we've all been sort of shut in, and most of us have, a lot of us have at that rate, have been shut in. I know I have, and Fur has. And we're kind of looking at Beltane, and we're wondering, okay, how can people still celebrate Beltane even though people can't really be together? Right, Fur?
Usually a gathering, usually have people then, a gathering place or something like that. And this is going to be different for this year.
Yeah, because people can't really gather. Because Beltane was a spring optimism festival. It was all about opening up to the year, because opening up, right, as if, I know. Yeah, we just got word from Whitmer, our governor of Michigan here, that we're going to be closed down till the 15th of May. It's our shelter in place has been extended. So definitely people are going to have to, if they celebrate Beltane, do it in a different way than they usually might have done. Back in the old days, it was all about moving the livestock out to pasture so that they could become fertile and multiply. Also, there was a feeling that the spirits or the fairies in the area would become active now, and the old folks used to try to appease them. But it was all about fertility and the waxing power of the sun.
You fertilize the ground.
Yeah, to fertilize the ground.
The beginning of the agricultural season.
Yeah. The whole agricultural season begins now. Now is when people would start to plant right after the last frost, which is generally right about after May 15th or so, at least in Michigan. We've been known to get snow right up until the last week of May, sometimes the first week of June. But as you know, you can't put seedlings out if it's going to freeze, because they freeze over and it destroys the seedlings and you have to do your work all over again. So that's why you have to wait until the last frost. And so, Beltane, it's about welcoming the abundance of the fertility of the earth.
Everybody's fertile.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot said about Beltane being a very sexual-oriented holiday. Mm-hmm. And for some people it is, definitely. But it's about abundance of all different kinds, not just fertility and sexuality.
Yes.
It's about it can be about the abundance of love, the abundance of bird song in the morning, which you didn't have in the winter, because now the birds are out there doing their thing. And
5 o'clock in the morning.
5 o'clock in the morning, doing their thing. And it's about taking those walks in nature, or maybe early in the morning or something, and catching on the ground a bright blue robin's egg that has been burst open, because the little birdies are beginning to be born real soon. And as you know, the mother birds will take the eggshells and fly them away from the nest so as not to attract predators. And when I was a little girl, around this time of year, I would search out those blue robin eggs, shells, because I thought that they were just sacred. And that's when I was a little girl. I still think they're sacred, even though, I'm a, full-grown adult. I'm a full-grown adult. Yes, I am. I'm 58. But I think little things like that are sacred. I mean, heck, I'm the woman who saves all of her cat's whiskers. I have them in a pincushion. What I'm going to do with these whiskers, I have no idea, but I've been saving them forever. I'm the witch that saves tiny little spice bottles, because I'm a kitchen witch. Mm-hmm. And I've got spice bottles all over the house that I've cleaned off and scrubbed off the labels, and I've just got unlabeled bottles with nothing in them. Maybe I should put the whiskers in the bottles. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but
That would be an idea to keep them safe.
Yeah. Their purpose will surface at some point, but I've been keeping empty spice bottles for years now, 5 or 6 years. But anyway, getting back to Beltane, maybe something abundant will come around that I'll have to put in the bottles, for all we know. Seeds is one thing that could go in the bottles.
Yes.
But welcoming abundance of the fertility of the earth, and it can be the fertility of friendships, however many friendships you have. And I am blessed with having a lot of friendships around the temple. There's people left and right that just are wonderful people, and we can't get together because, well, shelter in place. But we've been doing Zoom for the past month and a half now, and it's kept us together. It's kept me and Fur together.
Yeah. Kept my sanity together.
Yeah. It's helping keep a lot of people's sanity together because this isolation can be a downer for a lot of folks. But getting back to Beltane, oh, my cat just sneezed. Getting back to Beltane, it's about welcoming the Earth Mother, opening up to the fertility god. It's about all the yellow flowers that you see popping around you. The first thing we see are the forsythias in this area.
And daisies.
And daisies and daffodils.
Daffodils, yeah, that's what it is. My mom has.
Yeah, and tulips and dandelions. And please don't cut down your dandelions as soon as they appear because they are the first foods for the bees. And we need the bees because May flowers are coming and flowers need bees. And bees need flowers. And we're back to fertility again.
That's how it works.
Yeah, it's how the world goes around. It is the cycle of life. It's the circle of life, There is the maypole dance that people used to do. And as we know, the pole of the maypole dance was supposed to be the phallic symbol, and the ribbons that create the shaft around it are supposed to be the yonic symbol. But you don't have to go blazing with passion to try to celebrate Beltane. There are other ways to celebrate it without having to have someone
Marvin
next
Gaye
to
in
you.
the background?
What did you say?
Without having Marvin Gaye playing in the background?
Yes, without having Marvin Gaye playing in the background. Yeah. It can be tame or lusty. It just depends on who you're with and what you have available. Also, in Beltane of old, they used to have roaring Beltane bonfires.
Mm-hmm.
And that was all about the fact that you had to clear the land to get ready for planting the seeds. And that meant you had a lot of twigs and felled trees and things that you had to get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would burn those. And it would be bonfires. It just happened to coincide with Beltane, and all this stuff just sort of went together. And you had people dancing around the bonfires and having a great time, and later possibly hitting a sack. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But it was a wonderful. What's that?
Eat, drink, and be merry.
Eat, drink, and be merry. Definitely. Yep. But like I said, it can be tame or it can be lusty. Looking at some of the tame ways that Beltane can be celebrated. Planting for like the solitary witch or the solitary person can be a ritualistic thing because seed planting rituals abound on the net. It's all about fertilizing the earth and being the caretaker of this new growth that's coming up. Your garden of flowers or garden of food.
Encouraging new life.
Yes, encouraging new life. It's all about that. Also, this time of year, there have been a lot of May hand fastings.
Yes.
This is when people get together and do it. But there are ways to do marriages, hand fasting, even with the social distancing that we have to do.
Yeah, I've seen some that are quite cute. They're nice. They have the all they would have is, well, there would be church weddings.
Mm-hmm.
Would have the pastor and the bride and the groom, and they'd have the whole church full of pictures of all the people that were supposed to be there, and they'd be watching via internet.
Yeah, by internet or Zoom or something. And then I remember there was this one where they did the church up like that with all these pictures in the seats. And when the bride turned around with her father, who was giving her away, she turned around with the groom and saw all these pictures in the seats. Mm-hmm. That had to have been a wonderful, wonderful moment.
And some outdoor weddings and stuff, they'd have the cars come up around and they'd do like a parade or something around.
Honk their horns, have ribbons attached to the cars.
They'd be all decorated and stuff.
Lots of ribbons in Beltane.
Yeah. Ribbons and flowers.
Yeah, that's where all that comes from. There's also jumping the broom. That's a different kind of hand fasting ceremony, which I've always wondered, where did that come from? Jumping the broom? I think it was, I have heard it, I may be mistaken, but I have heard that was, began as an African American custom. I should know this because I am African American, and I'm ashamed to say that I don't know that if it's absolutely accurate or not. But I know that people do make that a part of a wedding ceremony. It's literally jumping over a decorated broom, usually decorated with ribbons and flowers. Mm-hmm. So we have that Beltane theme of ribbons and flowers going along.
Oh, it's like the rice. Throwing rice at a wedding.
Oh, yeah, throwing rice so that to encourage the fertility of the bride and groom. Yeah. I remember throwing rice at my sister's wedding. They don't do that anymore.
Not too much. Not as much.
Because the birds would eat the rice and the rice would blow up in their stomachs when they would drink water, and it would be a bad scene. So now, in most weddings, they will throw birdseed instead of rice.
All right.
Right? And that becomes more earth conscious, ecologically conscious, which is important. Mm-hmm. So, tree hugging is something that people also will do. And, you know, I've always thought of that as, are you kidding me? People actually going around hugging trees for real until I actually did it. And what's that?
It's cute, especially when you get kids involved and stuff. It's funny. It's cute.
Part of tree hugging is hugging the tree itself, but another part of it is sitting down at the base of the tree, and then you lean back and you feel the life of the tree behind you, just steadying you up, and then you look up into the branches.
Yeah.
And I've had experiences where I've looked up into the branches and I've watched the birds and the squirrels and the chitter chattering among the leaves, and it just becomes this wonderful, heart opening kind of experience where you feel connected. And literally that's what it's all about, is being connected to the earth. And one of the best ways that we can do that is to connect with the trees, because they are some of the oldest survivors. You know, and they've been there for a long time. They carry with them all the life of all the other trees, because it's been discovered that trees communicate to each other through their root systems. And they will feed each other and transfer fertilizer and nitrogen and stuff back and forth through the root systems to maintain healthiness in the forest. And hasn't it ever occurred to people, why is it that you don't have one sick tree in a forest and all the other trees are sick? It's because the trees literally help that tree that's sick to make sure the entire forest is sustained. You know, I think it's just a beautiful thing that I have come to find out about trees. But anyway, that's one thing that you can do. And there are many ways to feel that connection, not just sitting at the base of a tree. Hiking in the forest is one way.
Yeah, get outside.
Yeah, getting outside. I like to get outside first thing in the morning, like at the very crack of dawn, before I feed my cats, and that makes them mad because they usually get up right after dawn and wake me up to feed them. Well, sometimes I like to get up before they're up and listen to the birds.
Jealous.
Oh, they get mad because they want to be fed right away. I'm like, no, you have to wait till your feeding time, which is 6:30. But but I will get up and I will listen to the birds in the morning, and I'm the kind of person I can tell the different songs of the different birds. And when I was a little girl, I was such a proficient whistler that I could literally whistle the other birds to answer me.
Like Snow White.
Well, it was easier with the cardinals than it was with the robins. But they would. And it was unmistakable, but I digress. Baby animals. Egg fall is what I like to call it when the eggs fall out of the nests. Planting seeds. I remember this one time we had a ritual at PPT, and one of the priestesses was invoking Persephone. And Persephone gave, she handed everyone a little pot with some dirt in it, and then handed everyone a seed. And we all poked 3 little sunflower seeds into the dirt, and then she went around and watered each and every one. And she blessed these seeds. And then Howard and I took these home, and they grew. Oh boy, did they grow. And then we planted them in the ground. And we had the tallest Titan sunflower plants you would ever imagine. They were more than 8 feet tall. It was amazing.
Yeah, probably giants.
Yeah, they were giant sunflowers.
Yeah, because some sunflowers will grow up to like 12 feet.
Wow.
10, 12 feet, yeah.
How big are the sunflower heads?
Oh, probably dinner plates size.
Yeah, ours were dinner plate size, but I'm wondering if they get any bigger, because that would be like turkey plate size.
It would probably depend on, the size of, the structure, because a flower won't grow to the point where the head is too heavy and it'll fall over. It has to weight itself down.
Yeah, that's true. Yep, I remember those, and Howard was so proud.
I'm going to be planting soon.
Yeah, we harvested those seeds, and we still have them, and we need to plant some, because they come from a blessed seed, a blessed plant, and they're all blessed seeds at this point. Let's see. So you can celebrate Beltane all these different ways and more. But if you have children, and if you're alone, you might want to celebrate more on the tame side instead of the lusty side if you're by yourself. But then again, there are some solitary practitioners who do practice sex magic. And they would also incorporate that into their Beltane rituals with seedlings and things like that, however they wish to do that. But that's also another possibility. But if you have children, you can do the sunflower seed thing and explain the tiny seeds containing life ideas to children and to people. What male and female is as to the water, as to the soul, as to the soil. You can also do craft projects, braiding and beading ribbons, and then putting these ribbons on trees, just hanging them from the trees. That is a beautiful sight when you get a bunch of kids and they start hanging ribbons from trees for Beltane. It's just beautiful. We had some adults do that at one of the farms that we were celebrating at, and just watching all these colorful ribbons blowing in the breeze as the trees are just popping out their leaves. They haven't got their flowers yet, but you've got all this color blowing in the breeze, and it's just beautiful. Also, you can make Green Man masks or daisy chains. And I always wondered, where did daisy chains come from? It's a Beltane thing, and I never knew that, you know.
It makes sense, though, because the daisies are just now coming up and stuff. And
Yep, it's another yellow flower.
Yeah, yellow's a big color
for Beltane. Yep, yellow is, it begins with the forsythias and the daffodils and, like I said, the dandelions that we have to protect.
Marigolds.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about marigolds. Oh, those are gorgeous.
My mom's favorite flower.
Favorite of your mom's?
Yeah, it's different. I never understood that, but yeah, she'd always have pots of marigolds and stuff.
My mom did too. She usually planted them around the garden because they tend to stop, I think it's nematodes in the ground from getting to the seedlings and things. So she would have marigolds all the way around her garden. So, and I see from outside we have an interloper kitty cat. A lot of the animals are having babies this time of year. Yeah, lots of the animals. We have a colony of cats in this area, of very pretty, multicolored, black, white, and calico and tortoiseshell cats. And they keep the colony going. Not certain how the Humane Society would feel about that, but they're around. They've been here since we moved here. And then there's the squirrels.
Yeah.
And I've been noticing the squirrels that are like gathering stuff to pad their nests. And the birds too. Been noticing all of that. And that's one of the things that you can do with children at this time of year is get them out into nature and let them bird watch and see all the different changes that happen at this time of year, because there's a lot of them and a lot of people miss them.
Oh no, we had, when we were out at my mom's, we saw like 3 or 4 turkeys, wild turkeys. My kids got the biggest kick out of it.
Wow.
Because Bill was out there strutting his stuff. He had his full spread going, and he had 3 chicks following him.
Wait, the turkey had 3 females following him? Full-grown females. Oh, so the turkey had like a brood of females.
Yeah.
I didn't know they did that. I thought it was one turkey to one turkey. Apparently not.
No, he had a concubine or something.
All the more for the fertility, I suppose.
Yep. He was strutting his stuff. He thought he was hot stuff.
I guess he was in turkey language. Gobble, gobble.
He was a Barry White of turkeys.
Yeah. Gobble, gobble. I remember when at Lutheran High West, the high school I went to had a huge back meadow, and they had ringtail pheasants back there.
Yeah.
And in the end of April, beginning of May, we would start seeing the ringtail pheasants. They would be hopping around. I guess they were doing a mating dance or something. I don't know, but they would hop around in the fields, and they were just gorgeous to see.
Yeah, and all the geese are coming back too.
The what?
All the geese.
Oh, the geese. Yeah, the geese are coming back. You can't shake
Don't approach a goose. You don't mess with geese.
No, don't mess with geese.
Don't approach with them. They're nasty.
Yeah, they have so many teeth in their beaks. Oh, a bite from a goose would hurt really badly.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see a goose nesting, leave it alone, please. If it's in a bad spot, call the DNR, please. Don't try to do anything with it yourself. That's just common sense there. So yeah, these are some of the things that people can do to celebrate
And the backyard
Beltane.
bonfires.
Oh yes, the backyard bonfires from
That's what I
all.
love doing.
Yeah, you've got a nice backyard for that. What's
Huh?
that?
Do marshmallows and, s'mores and stuff, hot dogs.
Tell stories, sing songs.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go out there and play music on the stereo or something.
Or you can sing a lot of the songs that we Wiccans have for this time of year. Like We All Come from the Goddess and such like that. So that hopefully will help get rid of the cabin fever. Seeing how life is returning. Seeing how people are just livelier this time of year and thriving, hopefully. So Fur, you want to wrap up this edition of It Makes You Think? We hope we've given you some ideas for what to do, even though we're mostly sheltering in place, to celebrate Beltane.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to wrap up It Makes You Think while Fur attends to her children. And we will see you next time, 2 weeks from now. Say goodbye, Fur. Say goodbye, Fur.
Bye, Fur.
All right. And we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Thank you, and enjoy your May Day.
Yep.
Thank you for tuning in to Ask a Wizard. I'm your host, Grand Magus of the Order of the Crouching Wombat, Sorcerer Supreme of the Quantum Delirium Society, Magnus Felonius St. Croix. So I'd like to start off with some personal news. After rebuilding the studio following a certain feline-related incident, the powers that be have decided to offer me the opportunity to be your brand new host. Of course, I graciously accepted this great honor.
Magnus, do you think it's a good idea to lie to your audience on your first official show?
Why is there a child in the studio?
I'm not a child, Magnus. I'm your new program director, Michael O'Brien. The reason I look and sound like a child is because I was cursed. I was with Frank LaRousseau when he fought the dragon. Fortunately, I survived. Unfortunately, I'm stuck like this.
Well, alright then.
As I said before, don't you think you should be more honest with your audience?
I'm not lying, Mike. I was asked to be the permanent host of the show.
The way I heard it, you were court-ordered to host this show until you paid off the cost of the new studio. And please call me Michael.
Asked, ordered. What's the difference in the grand scheme of life?
I think it has to do with integrity.
Fine. Technically, a judge ordered me to host this show for the remainder of my natural life. Happy, Mike?
Transparency with an audience is very important when building trust. And once again, my name is Michael.
Let's get to the first question. Cheryl from Chattanooga asks, what part does focus have in producing magic? Well, Cheryl, focus is paramount when producing magical effects. If you are not completely focused on the task, then it can backfire in significant ways. Back in the 1830s, I was apprenticing under an ornery old coot named Lucius Billingsley. He was obsessed with transfiguration magic, that is, changing one thing to another. On one particularly frustrating evening, he was teaching me the basics of changing one animal to another. It was a simple exercise: point staff, say words, poof, dog becomes frog. At the time, I was really hungry and was about to cast the incantation when my mind wandered and poof, I spent the next 3 years as a frog.
Lucius didn't change you back?
Then how would I learn my lesson?
That seems unnecessarily cruel.
Nonsense. When he changed me back, I learned the lesson. Personal time is personal time and study time is study time. On to the next question. Cynthia from Dearborn Heights asks, do you think the moon landing was real? Well, that's rather complicated. We tried to fake it, but just couldn't get the lighting right. Woodstock, on the other hand, was faked. It was a combination of CGI and advanced puppetry. The late Jim Henson was heavily involved.
Hey, it looks like we have a call. I didn't even know this line was connected. We have Skull Crusher on line 1.
Skull Crusher the Inhumane, you're live on air.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. I always wanted to say that.
Sure. Do you have a question?
Yes. How do you intend on making the show different from Frank Rousseau's terrible, I'll admit, delicious style?
Magnus, I recognize that voice.
Guilty. I did eat the 4 rounds of the show, but honestly, it was a misunderstanding. He was in my lair.
It is common sense to stay out of a dragon's lair.
But you kidnapped Frank's wife, Jeannie.
I did not. We've been dating for several months now. Jeannie wrote Frank a letter. It was very clear.
Seems understandable.
Frank didn't tell me about the letter. He just asked me to help save Jeannie from a dragon.
Listen, kid, you got a flight. Frank did better than to come into my cave.
I am not a kid.
You'll be fine. The cruise only lasts 6 months.
That sounds fair. Skull Crusher the Inhumane. To answer your question, I would like to keep the show's format, but I want to include more in-depth interviews and interesting guests.
Thanks for answering my question, Magnus. Big fan.
He hung up.
What a great first caller. I would like to thank my new program director, Michael O'Brien. I have been Magnus Felonius St. Croix, and this has been Ask a Wizard. Thanks for listening, and remember, knowledge is power, but wisdom is a weapon.
This episode of PPT Presents is brought to you by Pagan Pathways Temple. Pagan Pathways Temple is a 501c3 out of beautiful Madison Heights, Michigan. We offer classes, community outreach, ritual space, and a library available to our members. To find out more or to become a member, please go to paganpathwaystemple.org or patreon.com/paganpathwaystemple. Pagan Pathways Temple, growing in the old ways where all paths are open.
This PPT Presents broadcast is brought to you by TechWitch Detroit. TechWitch Detroit for all your IT needs. Please visit us on the web at techwitchdetroit.com. TechWitch Detroit, we can help.